Hey everyone, here is my best shot of explaining Bitcoin in one take on my back patio. So, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a new form of digital money, and the reason humans need money is because barter is difficult. It's difficult to barter things like cows and eggs and whatever else, a pair of shoes. And so humans invented money. Money is a technology. And it's the technology that we use to interact and medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value, because it's hard to use other things for that. So over human history, humans have used seashells, glass beads, and ultimately newer technologies always replace the older technologies. So for example, glass beads replaced seashells, ultimately gold, precious metals replaced glass beads, and we are in the early stages of Bitcoin replacing gold as the store of value, ultimately medium of exchange, and long-term also unit of account. So in order for something to be a money, the number one characteristic that matters is it needs to be scarce. Anything that is not scarce is hard to use as money because there's a lot of it. And so the ability to find new amounts of whatever it is undermine its value. So the most valuable money is the scarcest money. For about 5,000 years, gold has been the scarcest, meaning the difficulty of finding new gold as compared to how much gold already exists in the world has been the hardest for gold. So what makes a good money? Well, whether it's seashells, glass beads, gold, or Bitcoin, you want something that is easy to use and hard to make more of. So over time, some things like seashells became extinct in the use for money. They became obsolete because they were hard to use as money, and ultimately they found too many ways to find new seashells, so they were not scarce and hard to use. Gold ultimately was hard to use because it's not very easy to divide it. It's hard to move in large amounts, etc. So gold was hard to use, but it was hard to make more of or to get more of. So it sort of solved half of the monetary equation. It was hard to use, but hard to make more of. And so it was good enough when no other technology existed. Right now, most of the world runs on fiat currency. Fiat means made up. It means by fiat, by dictate. It means the government just says it's money because it is. They print pictures of dead presidents on paper, and they hand them to you, and they say, this is money. So fiat currencies are easy to use because it's easy to carry paper around or to transact electronically online. So fiat currencies are easy to use, but they're also very easy to make more of. So the total amount of new dollars in circulation is constantly going up because the Federal Reserve in every country in the world is constantly printing more money. And they always claim there's some new emergency, and of course there never is, but they're constantly printing more money. So fiat currencies are easy to use, but easy to make more of. So they fail the test the opposite way of gold. So Bitcoin is the first money that humans have ever invented or discovered that is both easy to use and hard to make more of, because in the case of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network only produces a new amount of Bitcoin, and that new amount of Bitcoin drops every 4 years. I can also send any amount of Bitcoin anywhere in the world in a few seconds for very low fees on the Bitcoin network, which is very hard to do. Right now on a Saturday, I can't send money. If I want to send money right now across the planet, I can't because the banks are closed. They will not allow me to wire money until Monday, and even then, the other person doesn't get it till Tuesday or Wednesday, and usually wire transfers get rejected the first time for some reason. You got to try them again. Something's not right, whatever. It's just a royal pain to move significant amounts of money around. So anyway, Bitcoin solves that. So to summarize, money is a technology. The best money is easy to use and hard to make more of. Every past technology has failed the test of being both easy to use and hard to make more of, has eventually been supplanted by another technology that is either easier to use or harder to make more of. In the case of, beads and, glass beads and seashells and things like that, a lot of it was a function of just scarcity, the hard to make more of. The move to fiat currencies was entirely driven by the desire to have a currency that was easier to use, because obviously fiat currencies by their nature are way easier to make more of, which is why they're not scarce, which is why we have inflation and why prices are continually rising, because the government never stops printing more money. Long term, I think the entire world will end up on a Bitcoin standard, that Bitcoin will be the new monetary system of the world. It will become the reserve currency for corporate treasuries, as in corporate, companies where they keep their money. I think it'll ultimately end up being the preferred store of value for central banks. But each of those things takes a long time. Bitcoin's been around for 15 years, and it's just barely on the front end of getting past just consumers. There's only a handful of companies that are keeping Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and 0 central banks, to my knowledge, that are keeping Bitcoin on their balance sheet right now. Bitcoin has been adopted as legal tender in El Salvador, but El Salvador is a dollarized economy. So they do not, meaning they use the US dollar, meaning they do not have a central bank that can print fiat currencies and buy Bitcoin with it. As soon as the very first central bank that prints paper and buys paper meaning they print something not scarce and buy something scarce with it, as in Bitcoin, will be a sort of a huge deal for the Bitcoin community. And as soon as more companies adopt Bitcoin and keep it on their in their treasury funds, in their bank accounts, just like companies keep US dollars right now, that will be a huge deal as well. So there's a few companies like MicroStrategy and Square/Block and Coinbase and a few others that keep Bitcoin on their corporate balance sheets, but it's very few companies right now. And as soon as that happens, that adoption curve of Bitcoin will radically accelerate. So what does that mean? It means if you have US dollars that can be converted to Bitcoin, in my opinion, now is a great time to convert them. And in the long term, I think the world will be on a Bitcoin standard. We will not have recessions the same way we do today, because recessions are heavily caused by fiat money printing and the Federal Reserve's manipulation of the money supply, which results in the boom-bust cycles. Those are not natural. The boom-bust cycles are almost entirely in the modern era caused by fiat money printing by central banks and the manipulation of interest rates, which should be floating based on supply and demand, but are not due to the manipulation of central banks. So I think long term, the world ends up on a Bitcoin standard. We're way better off in a million different ways, and the entire world will be a lot better. So anyway, hopefully other jurisdictions in addition to El Salvador will adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. Prospera on the island of Roatan in Honduras, where I am president, reporting to the CEO. Prospera, our jurisdiction, was the first jurisdiction in the entire world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender within our jurisdiction, but also we do not have a central bank like El Salvador does not have a central bank, so you can use Bitcoin within our jurisdiction. You can use just about anything for currency within our jurisdiction, and we were the first jurisdiction in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. So anyway, great time to adopt Bitcoin. The price will be volatile as long as you can stomach that volatility. My hope is that as many people get on the front end of that transition to the new monetary system as possible, because the earlier you are in that adoption process, the more of the new money you end up with, and the new money ends up being way more valuable than the old money in the case of, for example, the transition from glass beads to gold. So we're still very early into this worldwide Bitcoin adoption process. So if you got any questions, post them here. Happy to help. Otherwise, have a wonderful Saturday. Thanks.